Good evening, and thanks for having me here. I am probably best known for starting the Princeton Review, which I ran for many years. I took it public, realized I was a terrible public company CEO, and it was a lot less fun than I thought it might be, and started a company called Tutor, which is actually now called 2U. We work with some of the best schools in the US to create very high-quality online programs, graduate school, and as of today, an undergraduate initiative that I can speak to later. Our model with our partner universities, these are students at a USC or at a Georgetown. They're admitted by the same standards of the university, by their admissions office. The faculty is the university's admissions office. The intellectual property is owned by the university as well. The core educational experience is a Georgetown or a Duke experience. We embed on-campus instructional designers to work with the school to create asynchronous materials, and I'll speak more about that. And we do the funding for the program. Each one of them has cost between $10 and $20 million to create. We build the technology. We do the recruiting, the student services, all the way through job placement. So we see our businesses flanking the core educational experience in sort of an intriguing way. The technology we built, my feeling is the universities generally around the world are using technologies that were built to flank classroom instruction and not to replace the classroom, is heavily, heavily social and heavily mobile. 65% of our students use their mobile devices, iPads or Androids or iPhones, for the predominant of their experience. If you think about Coca-Cola, it's a 125-year-old brand. It's global. The brand itself is worth billions of dollars. If you think about some great universities, they're 200- or 300-year-old brands, and of course 800 years old in some cases. These are huge, great brands that if you can unlock them, actually is an interesting business opportunity as well globally. I think one of the things to think about in terms of trends and to answer some of the questions that were asked is that the end of a geographic monopoly for colleges really unleashes a competition that I don't think schools have seen, except perhaps at the super elite level, ever. So Tutor is actually growing very well and headed towards its own IPO and has scaled, which meant it was time for me to leave because I've learned something. And so I did that a couple months ago to create a new company called Noodle. And the best way to think of it, it is Beta Works for Education. We're raising $50 million to create a company that creates education technology companies, probably 4 or 5 companies a year spinning out. And the first of those companies is Noodle Match, Noodle Search. The notion is you're looking for a preschool or a college, a fitness instructor, a tutor, a video on the quadratic equation. Where do you go and how do you find it? And the answer is the search experience, even Google's excellent search experience, 80% of searches fail. It's hard to think about education search the way you think about other searches, and we think we can change that experience. In terms of some answers to some other questions that were asked, I just wanted to give some observations about where the future is. The first one is MOOCs, and the question of how degrees are going to morph over the next couple years. And I'd like to think about, is the degree going away to be replaced with badges and other certifications? Think about this for a second. The traditional education model is you've got a textbook, then you give a lecture in front of people, and then, of course, you're going to discuss. And when Angela spoke about the flipped model, where the world is already headed is you have students using a textbook. There's asynchronous materials. You've taken what would have been the lecture, brought it online in some interesting way, and had students do that before they walk in the classroom, and now the classroom is, of course, where you discuss. In a tutor program, in an online program, it could be an MBA program with UNC Chapel Hill, or a master's in nursing, or as I say, some undergraduate courses. That discussion is online. 10 students with a professor sitting in different parts of the world, but it doesn't really matter where the discussion is. It still is going to happen, and that's the core educational experience. But think about where the world's headed. The textbook companies are all spending a great deal of time and money to take their materials, make them high media, modular, interactive, and collaborative, and embed assessment into it. And meanwhile, the asynchronous folks, folks like Coursera and edX, the MOOCs, are taking their material, which started out just being a lecture recorded, and making them modular and interactive and richer and embedding assessment. In other words, where you're going to end up is there's just a bunch of asynchronous material that you as a professor curate, or you as a teacher in K-12 curate, or the school curates, into the asynchronous things you want students to do both before and after the core discussion. In other words, the MOOCs are not going to end up competing with Cambridge. They're going to end up competing with Pearson. The danger, of course, is that top of the pyramid, instead of 10 students with a professor, could end up with 20 students with an adjunct, could end up with 40 students with a TA, could end up with just lots of students just basically taking a correspondence course. And the race to the bottom, where something stops being a university and where it starts being simply a correspondence school, losing the social part of an educational experience, either K-12 or higher ed, I think is something that's going to be fought over the next couple years, has business opportunities, and at the same time, some real risk, both socially and business-wise. The next trend, a lot of people asked about cost, and I just want to think about for a second. You can write a book for $30,000. You can build a video game on average for about $20 million, although there's some that cost much more, and the average movie now costs $65 million to make. So the question of free materials, Creative Commons or the MOOCs or anything else, in a sense, the free is the enemy of the good. A teacher just going on and teaching something about the quadratic equation is great. Somebody putting actually some money in and building something that is truly interactive, collaborative, and compelling to students who are taking something used to something much deeper is sort of an intriguing question. So as you know, the cost of universities, does that mean 1 minute? Yep. The cost of anything online, high upfront costs, low marginal costs, and that's what I think you're going to see played out. Don't think of universities as monolithic, think of them as a series of little competitions. If you're an elite level law program, you don't think of a community college as your competitor, you just compete with other elite law schools, law programs. And so in each box, the economics of online higher ed are going to shrink the pie. You're going to see consolidation, many more students getting a great education, but doing it in many fewer schools. And I think the challenge for Cambridge is, having lost its geographic monopoly, is it going to play hard in the next generation of learning, or is it going to become a little bit, in a sense, smaller? And I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.